What could you, as a modern human, actually offer people 10,000 years ago, and what technologies could you truly recreate? You can make fire, you can make pottery, you can even make safe water, but then your stomach reminds you of the real boss fight, food that doesn't disappear tomorrow. Hunger doesn't care about your ideas, it cares about routines. So today, you build food as a system, not find something and hope. A pipeline, gathering, preserving, and then growing. By the end of this episode, you will know how to turn wild food into stored calories that survive bad weather. You'll learn 3 preservation upgrades you can do with almost nothing: drying, smoking, and fermentation. And you'll learn the first steps of future farming, the point where a camp stops chasing food and starts producing it. You start with gathering, but you do it like an engineer, not a gambler. You look for calories first: nuts, seeds, starchy roots, fatty foods. Berries are great, but berries are a snack, not a winter plan. You learn the landscape like a map of energy. You also build a safety habit. You never bet your whole body on an unknown plant. You gather what the group already knows, and when you test something new, you test small and slow. You watch for patterns: where it grows, what animals avoid, what season it appears. You don't trust one lucky day. Then you think in time. A good forager isn't just collecting food, you're collecting a calendar: when nuts drop, when fish run, when certain roots are best. You teach the group to harvest without destroying the source, because next month matters as much as tonight. This is the first shift from survival to stability. You stop being surprised by the seasons. Now you add protein, but you keep it predictable. Big hunts are dramatic, but they waste energy and invite injury. You aim for repeatable wins: fish traps, simple weirs, small game, seasonal runs. You're building a routine that feeds people even when luck is low. You start with water, because water is a conveyor belt. You place traps where fish naturally funnel. You check them on a schedule, not maybe, a schedule. And when you succeed, you don't celebrate first, you process first. Because a full catch can rot faster than you think, you teach clean handling, separate raw processing from clean storage. Not because you're fancy, because sickness steals more calories than it gives. Then you connect the idea to the future. Every stable society is built on reliable protein, not heroic meals, but dependable meals. And you keep reminding yourself the goal isn't to eat more today. The goal is to eat again tomorrow. Now the real upgrade begins: preservation. Because a camp that cannot store food is a camp that lives in fear of weather. Your first tool is drying, because drying is just math. Water leaves, spoilage slows, time appears. You slice food thin because thickness is the enemy. Thick pieces trap moisture and invite rot. Thin strips dry faster, safer, and more evenly. You use sun and wind when you can, and you use the warm edge of the fire when you must. Not in flames, near heat. You learn to protect drying food from insects with distance, smoke, and simple covers. You teach a rule: dry the surplus the same day you harvest it. Do not save it for later. Later is when it spoils, and you store dried food high and dry, protected from damp. Drying turns gathering into inventory. Inventory turns hunger into planning. And planning is the first taste of civilization. Drying is great, but smoke adds 2 superpowers: protection and flavor. You build a small smoking setup, even a simple frame over a low, smoky fire. The point is not flame, the point is smoke and gentle heat over time. You choose wood that produces steady smoke, and you keep the fire small. You hang food where it warms and dries without cooking fast. You're trying to remove moisture slowly while bathing it in smoke that discourages insects and spoilage. You also learn a crucial skill: controlling airflow. Too much air and you get flames. Too little and the fire dies. A good smoke is a slow breath. Smoke food becomes travel food. It becomes winter food. It becomes trade. And trade changes everything. Because once you can store value as food, people can specialize. One person can build, another can hunt, another can teach. Because the group isn't one bad day away from panic. Now you teach the most surprising preservation trick, fermentation. Because you don't always need heat to protect food. Sometimes you need the right microbes to defeat the wrong ones. You use your pottery to controlled environment. You pack food tightly in a jar. You keep it submerged in salty water, and you limit air exposure. The goal is to create conditions where friendly fermentation takes over before rot does. You explain it simply: this is food that protects itself. It becomes sour, stable, and safer to store. It also adds variety, and variety matters because people burn out on monotony. You keep it practical. Clean container, clean hands. Keep it cool and shaded. Burp or check the jar gently if pressure builds. And keep the surface submerged. Fermentation is civilization in a jar. It turns today's harvest into next month's meals. And it teaches the group that nature can be trained, not only for. Preservation is only half the job. Storage is the other half. Because you can do everything right and still lose food to damp, pests, or careless hands. You create a food zone the same way you created a water zone. Raised storage, away from ground moisture, protected from animals, organized so people don't dig through everything like desperate raccoons. You teach one rule: first in, first out. Old food gets used before new food. That prevents hidden spoilage and keeps inventory honest. You also separate smells. Strong-smelling food attracts animals, so you store it higher, tighter, and away from sleeping areas. And you keep food off the ground because ground is where moisture lives. This is where your modern thinking pays off again. You don't just store food, you store order. And order is what allows a group to grow without collapsing into arguments and waste. Now you pivot from chasing food to producing it. You don't start with a huge farm. You start with experiments. A small plot near camp, easy to watch, easy to water, easy to defend. You teach seed saving as a sacred habit. The best seeds are not the ones you eat first. They are the ones you protect first. Because seeds are future meals in a compact form. You choose crops by logic. What stores well, what grows reliably, what gives calories. You start with hardy plants, not delicate dreams. And you improve soil slowly. Compost away from water sources, ash in small amounts, and leaves returning to the ground instead of being wasted. You also teach spacing and timing, not because you're fancy, because plants compete. If you want food security, you need a predictable harvest, not a lucky one. This is where the camp becomes the settlement, because once food grows near home, time appears again. Now you step back and feel the difference. Yesterday, food was a chase. Today, food is a plan. You built a pipeline: gather, preserve, store, and begin to grow. And that pipeline does something more important than feeding people. It reduces panic. When panic drops, accidents drop. When accidents drop, knowledge survives. You also create a new kind of wealth, not gold, not metal. Stored calories. Calories that can be carried, traded, and rationed. That changes social behavior immediately. People stop fighting over the next bite and start negotiating over the next season. This is why preservation is a technology upgrade, not a cooking trick. It turns surplus into stability, and stability into specialization. Now one person can build shelters, another can improve tools, another can teach. Because the group isn't forced to spend every day hunting tomorrow's dinner. You didn't invent food, you invented time. All right. Field notes. This is the practical checklist you can run even when you're tired. 1. Build your food pipeline. Every day ask one question: is this food for today or for next week. If it's surplus, preserve it the same day you harvest it. Surplus that waits becomes spoilage. Make rolls in the camp. Someone gathers, someone processes, someone stores. A pipeline beats chaos. 2. Drying is your first preservation upgrade. Slice thin. Thin wins. Use sun and wind when possible, and gentle warmth near the fire when needed. Protect food from insects with distance. Smoke, simple covers and height. When it feels dry enough, dry a little longer. Then store it off the ground, away from damp. 3. Smoking turns food into travel and winter power. Small smoky fire, not flames. Hang food where it warms and dries slowly. Control airflow. A good smoke is a slow breath. Smoked food becomes trade, and trade creates specialization. 4. Fermentation is civilization in a jar. Use clean pottery. Pack food tightly. Keep it submerged in salted water. Limit air. Store cool and shaded. Keep the surface submerged. This creates stable, sour food that lasts and adds variety. 5. Storage is part of preservation. Raised platform, covered containers, organized bundles. First in, first out. Separate strong smells, protect from animals and keep inventory visible so it doesn't rot in the dark. 6. Begin growing with small experiments. Save the best seeds first, not last. Start a small plot near camp. Improve soil slowly with compost away from water and small amounts of ash. Track seasons like a calendar. Your goal isn't a perfect farm. Your goal is a predictable harvest. If you can do this system, you stop living meal to meal. You stop gambling with winter, and you earn what every civilization needs most: time. Next episode, we can follow the dependency that boosts everything: charcoal and higher heat. Or we can go deeper into early agriculture. Your call.